All right, we are back, Peanut Gallery. Let's talk about Tony Khan's booking style.
Yeah. All right, so we are resuming our series after a couple weeks off. But the reason I want to talk about Tony Khan's booking style is obviously he's relatively new to the wrestling industry. He's been a fan for a long time, but as far as the industry and all of its nuances go, he's pretty new at it.
Right.
So I want to talk about how his style kind of differs from the styles maybe of other bookers who have been in the business a little bit longer.
Well, and I'll talk about that one. So before we even get into it, I think this one's important.
Right. And we can't just talk about Khan because while he's the decision maker, he also has executive vice presidents of varying degrees of power that help him to make those decisions.
Right.
And I find it to be a kind of a balancing act. You don't want to be WCW where you give all of these stars the titles, which, it has all of these individuals besides Brandy Rhodes have held gold at some point in time.
But it felt like that they were the right person at the right time. They just didn't give them the belt to give them the belt.
Right. And I think that's what differentiates Tony Khan's booking style, his final authority over the decisions of perhaps some WCW talent. So in WCW, what's different about the structure is that in WCW, the wrestlers were given the final say on how their matches go. And that's what led to the 1.5 million reigns of Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. And, that's what led to that problem. And then you got disagreements between the wrestlers and the management that wanted to
They don't have that here.
Right.
And
here,
that's the difference.
Here, the non-wrestler, the guy who has not only all the money invested into it, but also
these guys are counsels. They're a part of the company, and they understand that.
They understand the business, but they are not in control of the final decisions that are being made.
They can make recommendations,
yes,
but they can't make the final decisions.
Right.
Now, I think Kenny Omega is the only one who can have true power over certain things with his character, like with the One-Winged Angel. I know for a fact.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the booking styles.
I know.
We're talking about the booking styles.
But that is a booking style.
No,
that is a booking thing.
No, it's not, because a lot of wrestlers have those protected finishers. But that's another conversation for another time.
That might be another good one.
Yes, because we can talk about a bunch of different wrestlers that have protected finishers. But the point being is that with this company's wrestling, with the wrestlers actually being a part of the committee as well, it helps to develop certain aspects of the wrestling promotion and that differ from maybe someone like WWE. So remember back when I talked about the WWE, we were talking about what makes a good brand, and we were talking about these three pillars. We're talking about production value, we're talking about the wrestlers, and we're talking about the writers. All three of them are integral parts of the organization.
Right.
The reason that WWE does so well at production is because they have ex-wrestlers doing the producing for a lot of these matches.
Right.
And I'm going to go into detail with another series that I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to call it production styles. I'm going to talk about different wrestlers' production styles.
That's important too in a professional wrestling
company. But what WWE is weakest at is their writing, their booking, their all of that is weak because the writers are detached from the product that they're writing.
Right.
Where AEW is weak, arguably, is the production, which is it's a
2-year-old
right. It's a 2-year-old company. They're not going to have the tenured wrestlers that you expect other companies to have.
And it's getting better and better.
It is.
But just arguably,
it's getting better as time goes on. We saw that with the production value of last night's pay-per-view.
Right.
But where they really excel at is they really excel at their booking. And I'm not talking about the short-term booking. I want to talk first about the long-term booking.
Like this.
Like what we saw last night. The arc of Hangman Adam Page winning the world title has literally been in place since the very beginning of the promotion.
Right.
He lost the first title match to
Because-
Chris Jericho.
Because Chris Jericho already had the built-in credibility, and they wanted to hit hard with a credible world champion.
But what I'm trying to get at is that ever since then, there has been this constant struggle with Hangman Page becoming the world champion, and that long-term booking has finally come to fruition.
Right.
And so,
I'll be honest with you, I think this whole thing started between these two specifically when they won the World Tag Team Champions.
yes, that's kind of the point. The point is that everything has been leading up to Hangman Page winning the title.
Against Omega.
It started along. It was eventually going to happen.
Right.
Omega was just inserted into the picture and it made it better.
Right.
But this has been planned from the very beginning.
Right.
With the EVP, presumably someone like Kenny Omega, developing this arc so that this young star can become the first homegrown AEW talent to win the world championship
Right.
at the right time.
And it was the right time. Yes.
So, where AEW does not excel at currently is that they have, and I think part of this is just is credibility issues. It's a young company, not a lot of established stars, but there are
Right.
certain divisions that are kind of lackluster, most notably the women's division, which has yet to build that long-term arc that we see very strong in the men's singles
Exactly.
division.
Yeah. It seems like they're kind of hot-shotting like the contenders with the women's division, and I think they're introducing too much.
And so where the women's division is failing is that lack of long-term storytelling. Now, I don't know. Again, company's only 2 years old. They might have something in the works. We just don't know it right now.
This is true.
The tag team division is the same way. You don't really have that long-term booking that you're seeing with the arc, the arc that you're looking at.
Right. Same thing with the TNT division.
Right. The other thing I want to talk about, too, is the roster size.
It's huge.
With the roster being the size that it is, you have a lot of opportunity to build up a lot of great stars, but at the same time, you are going to have stars that fall by the wayside.
Yep.
So as you bring in stars like CM Punk and Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson, you lose out on people like Brian Cage, like Kip Sabian, like, those people that were in the...
Sean Spears.
Those people that have been in the company longer than some of these newer stars. And so I think where people are drawing these comparisons to WCW is that Tony Khan obviously has a lot of investment, and so he is trying to go after the people that they're...
Because they just got the news that they're
Right.
released. Oh, we can capitalize on it. And I'm going to tend to agree with you. Like, they need to stop hiring right now. Now, they can do it for, like, one-offs.
Right.
They had Arya Davarian with Rampage, but they were in Minneapolis, and that's where he's from, so they wanted to do a match. Okay, fine.
Anyways, the point being is that I don't know what, and I think Vince McMahon talked about this too on one of his quarterly earnings. It's like, I don't know what the roster strategy is for Tony Khan. And honestly, I don't know what the roster strategy is for Tony Khan.
I hate saying this.
Either.
I don't think there is a roster strategy.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a roster strategy, but I just don't see it right now.
Right.
I don't see and for other companies, it's perfectly obvious as to where it's going. WWE has a very intentional roster strategy.
Right. Impact Wrestling
has a very intentional roster strategy. New Japan Pro Wrestling has a very intentional roster strategy.
This one just seems like sign everybody, throw them out there, here you go. That's
AEW,
why I don't see it.
And like I said, maybe there is a strategy because they don't hire everybody and anybody.
No.
There obviously is some thought that goes into it,
Right.
but I just don't know what that is yet.
Right. No, there is, but...
And the other thing, too, is I don't know what the circulation of stars looks like either, because obviously long-term storytelling means that some stars don't get used for a while.
Right.
And so I want to know what the rotation looks like. How many years does it take for a star to get rotated through the system?
And I think this is why when they introduced Rampage, I wanted them to do a roster separation because they have too big of a roster to not.
And I think that at some points in time they are going to do a roster separation. But again, I don't know what the booking strategy is.
I think right now they're just going to try to make sure that this transition between TNT and TBS goes really smoothly.
Yep.
And then figure that out from there. Because obviously they're the toast of the town. Everyone's talking about them right now. So right now they're like, okay, we need to make sure that the production side of it goes smoothly because arguably that's where they are the weakest.
Right. And of course, with the roster being the way that it is, you got a lot of big stars, but you got a lot of stars that haven't been exposed very much to the audience.
You have like your Abaddons. You have all the members of Dark Order, which is a huge group. You have Sean Spears, the Kip Sabian one as well. It's like there was a lot of great people here that they are not utilizing just yet.
And again, I don't know what their thinking is because it's still a new company, but I did want to talk about it. So far, I think that they're very successful at what they're doing.
Right.
The structure that they have in place has some hiccups, but as far as creative direction goes, I can see kind of where their intentions are.
No, I agree with you.
However, there's growing pains. And
with any new company.
With any new company, there's growing pains.
And yes, they're still new. They're 2 years old. I think you're not even a new company until you hit like 5 years.
Yeah, especially in the wrestling industry.
Right. Because things come and go, in which I will be talking about.
And I think that I don't know how many other issues they're going to have, especially with the way that the wrestling industry is going right now, where there are companies dying, where there are companies being born, where there's so much change going on, and I just want to see how AEW develops that identity for itself.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty much all I got as far as the booking styles go.
Yeah.
But do you have anything you want to add?
Not right now, no. So when we come back, we're going to talk about wrestling lesson and rich people who want to start a wrestling company.